We are live for the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario show. And as always, looking forward to connecting and just going through this week's events as well as looking ahead as to what could be on the horizon. And I have a lot of interesting thoughts I want to share with you, Mario, in reference to this whole recession talk and how gold is becoming a primary buzzword again and things like that. But before we dive in any further, welcome. How you doing, Mario? Give us a rundown of what's happening in the UK and how you been doing this week thus far.
Oh, I'm fine, thank you, Mike, and I hope you're doing well too. What's happening in the UK? Well, we had GDP data this week, and it dropped for the second quarter running. So officially, we're in a recession, and it doesn't surprise me. And the other thing that's happening, supposedly or apparently, we're going to have farmers' protests tomorrow in Dover on the south coast. Going to start tomorrow morning. So it looks like it's spreading to the UK as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, on our side, never a dull moment as well. We've had a lot of unfortunate events. There's there's an increase in incidents where, people using guns for nefarious purposes, causing a lot of issues. And I have a concern about why that is, but a lot of lives lost, unfortunately. Migrant crisis is still an issue, and on top of everything else, it's just a lot of things just starting to compound up at once. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the days ahead. But as always, man, I'm looking forward to going through some headlines, sharing our thoughts on things. And before we dive any further, I want to welcome everybody to the live stream. Any first-time viewers, definitely let us know where you're watching from, and don't be afraid to hit that thumbs up button in support of the channels, whether it's on Rethinking a Dollar or on Manico 64. Show some love. And as always, the goal before we get into the news and updates is just to give you a little bit of behind the scenes as to things that we utilize personally. And so I'm very grateful to have, Four Patriots to be a contributor to the channel and the community, as well as the Dirty Man Safe of Mario. So real quickly, we're just going to give you some information for those who may be new, may not be familiar with what options are available. And so right here, we got the Dirty Man Safe. Mario, I'll let you give us the breakdown on that one.
Yeah, it's just a simple and easy way to protect your valuables. And they've got a patent pending on this safe. And yes, I have a promo code. It's Maneco10. All the details are in the description of my videos. And right now, I think there's a free gift as well if you were to purchase a Dirty Man safe. And I mean, with what's going on in the world today in terms of law and order, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, good point. And then also, I want to make sure I big up my people, as I mentioned, at Four Patriots. Give you guys a chance to prepare with food and energy and a variety of things that they have available. So if you haven't, I want to encourage you to go to 4patriots.com/RTD, and it'll take you directly to the sales page here, where you can get a variety of items of things that are good to have just in case. And speaking of which, I did like a little giveaway on the channel for myself. And so giving back to the community. So helping people get their calories up, as I call it. And so just something to take advantage of. If you're interested, 4patriots.com/RTD, more information in the chat. So now that we got that out the way, man. So let's jump right into it, man. Lots of interesting things to talk about. And here in the U.S., because I think the U.S. ultimately will be it's the leading indicator of where the world is heading, because it's the biggest and we have the reserve currency. So we're going to be last, but then that's not necessarily a good thing. But midweek, inflation rose by a bigger than expected 3.1% in January. And so I guess the taming of the inflation beast is not going according to plan, even though Yellen says everything is all hunky-dory, don't worry about it. But then again, that 2% target is long gone. And now it's a matter of balancing out those figures they give us of 3.1 or whatever it might be. But what are your thoughts on this, Mario, when you first saw this?
Yeah, it's not surprising. I think we're in the same kind of cycle that we saw in the 1970s. And back then you had waves of inflation. And even though I don't like to talk of CPI as inflation, it's an indicator of inflation. But in the 70s, for example, late 60s towards 1974, there's a big wave of inflation, or CPI rose, and then it came down. and then
Mhm.
the final wave was like from 1977 to the early 80s. So we could be on the cusp of a second bigger wave than we saw from, let's say, 2021 to mid early 2023. And
Mhm.
I think with what's happening with economies all around the world, it's just a matter of time that the US economy falls into recession. The reason it hasn't is because the US has the exorbitant privilege to
Mhm.
print money and keep, borrow a lot, the government, and keep the economy going. But there comes a point when even printed money, like we've seen here in the UK with the recession, official recession, comes a point where it doesn't work anymore. So I think the Fed will have to step in uh, quite soon, especially with all their programs ending soon. BTFP and also the reverse repo probably draining very soon. We saw
Mhm.
the Fed's balance sheet is kind of flattened out the last few weeks, even though we need to keep an eye on to see if that's just an aberration. So, yeah, I'm not surprised, Mike.
Yeah, and I think you reference the Federal Reserve at some point having to come to terms with the real state of the economy, and we talked about this was over a year plus ago when they changed the barometer, they changed the metrics and what a recession consists of as far as the 2 quarters. So to me, I remember mentioning that back in the day that was kind of like an admission of issues that they were trying to avoid by redefining what they would call a recession. And what catches me by surprise now is that, why now? Like, of course, the UK and Japan could have easily fudged the numbers, fudged the books a little bit, and had their primary, spokesman come out and say, "Oh, everything is hunky dory, everything is fine," similar to how Yellen over here and Jerome Powell also are speaking more favorable rather than truthful. And so I'm more so like, okay, it's February. Is this a part of a setup? The fact that they're admitting that there's a contraction in the economy, and now what? Because the next things will be then everyone will be forced to pivot, primarily the G7 nations that have the largest economies. And so, I'm just curious as to why now, because they could have easily gotten more out of these statistics they've been giving us, but they haven't. So, is this a setup for something bigger, or are they preparing a narrative so that they can come in and try to save the day to the issues that they cause? So, it's hard to read, but we will see. Um, and speaking of which, we had the figures today. Let me bring this up on the screen here. Wholesale prices post biggest increase in 5 months. PPI shows the inflation fight is not over. So the purchasing I'm sorry, the PPI figures also signaling that there's increased costs to
Yeah,
purchase goods, which has ultimately been passed on to consumers, and so they're having issues with their costs as
mm.
well. So,
There is no inflation fight, Mike. What there is uh, a campaign to keep the people asleep about the fact that they have to inflate. So yes, it's just how can I say? Some people think Paul Volcker killed inflation in the early 80s, but what he did was bring it under control so that people wouldn't notice it. That's what they want to do. They don't want to kill inflation or fight inflation because that would bring the whole system down. The other factor that's pointing towards more, higher prices is
mhm.
that the M2, which was last published at the end of December, that's starting to bounce back up quite relatively sharply. We have to wait for the January numbers. So that's a sign of inflating. When M2 is rising, that's inflation.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I'll bring that up on the screen here because I haven't had a chance to take a look at that one. Let me bring this up here. Let me get you out of the way over here.
Get it to the 1 year time frame. It's
Yeah, let
better,
me.
easier to see.
Ooh,
Just
uh,
click on 1 year at the top there.
1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year.
Yeah,
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 boom.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. There we go.
I think you've got the wrong M2. It's M2. Let me see here. I send you a link
Let me
because
go
they've
back here.
changed M2s. Let me get a link here and I'll send it to you. through the private chat. Where's the
All right, so
private?
this says
Yeah.
January 1st, 2024, M2.
Let me send you this one here.
Yeah. Let me grab that copy. Let me grab this 1 second. Paste, enter.
So now
All
go
right.
to a 1 year.
1 year.
Oh, hold on. You see how it's rebounding?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Interesting. Interesting. Let me zoom out just a little bit and see.
that's
Okay.
where,
Tip
yeah,
20.
it topped there, and now it went down for since the towards the end of 2022, and now it seems
Yeah.
to be. We have to wait and see where it comes out the next set of data.
Interesting. 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 Yeah, man. So along with the recessionary concerns, equity markets. We had Dow early this week, all-time high, S&P, all-time high, and looks like the Nikkei in Japan, all-time high. So, um, how is it? I mean, so give me your assessment as to how the economy is contracting in all these nations. They're having issues. People aren't spending as much, but all of a sudden, the equities markets in these nations happen to be trending upward. Where is this liquidity coming from, or who's
Well,
juicing the markets?
the central banks, of course, in Japan especially, and the Nikkei just broke through the all-time high from late 1989, early 1990, just below 40,000 yen in the Nikkei 225. Uh, so it's taken 34 years to to get back to that level. And I've looked, at the Japanese yen versus gold.
Hmm.
Since 1989, it's dropped 83%. So, yeah, like so yes, these stock markets are looking really good, but it's not because of a healthy economy, but it's because the currency is fetching a lot less. And in Japan, it's really important that the currency is weaker because they export a lot. So their
Hmm.
companies, uh, their big companies are doing really well from a cheap, weak yen, and that's why the Nikkei is up. But I think it's all artificial, to be honest. And the same thing goes for the U.S. stock market, and we know about the fact that the depth of the of this rally is really thin. There's not
Yeah.
many companies that are doing really well.
Yeah, and what's another thing that's amazing is that like it doesn't surprise me because of the whole illusion of the wealth effect. Like the primary focus for the average, I guess investor is that when they look at their portfolios, they see that the portion of their portfolio that allocated towards the stock market is trending up. And so long as that confidence is there, it keeps people, complacent and keep them somewhat quiet and dumbed down to where the other indicators in the economy, such as the so I was looking at earlier the let me see what I was looking at, just some of the figures that came out with the housing, and just looking over that, like seeing how you know not so good the housing situation is. And so here's some figures here. Housing starts negative 14.8%. We got housing starts
Yeah.
1.33 million was 1.45 was expected. So the housing side, building permits is down
Oh, yeah.
1.47. So it's like, housing in general, due to the high interest rate environment, is not looking too pretty.
Yeah,
So it's
I
like,
mean, the housing starts there is quite a sharp drop, and it's the expectation was for unchanged, so minus
yeah.
14.8 is quite big. That's probably why we're seeing gold and silver rebound today. Uh, Even though if I look at the 10-year yield, it's actually almost up 10 basis points, which is a bad thing as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, not surprising though. The housing starts seeing that treasury yields and the mortgage yields are going higher. People are not going to be building houses to sell.
Right, right, right. So it just things that doesn't make sense, but then again, should it really? And speaking of which, you sent me the tweak about um, the projected possible cuts from Bostic, And so it says I was at 2 rate cuts in the dot plot, but I could move more. I could move to 3 for sure. So
Yeah, that's a
um,
dovish lean on it, I guess.
yeah. So once again, at this current trend, do you see the Federal Reserve admitting or announcing a recession before the presidential elections?
Well, not well. We'll have to wait for the GDP data for the
Yeah.
first quarter and the second quarter. Even though back in 2022, it seems a long time ago now, there were two consecutive quarters of negative
Yeah.
GDP. But as you said earlier, they changed the definition and said, oh, the unemployment rate is too low to declare a recession, even though they probably, doctored those numbers. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to wait. They will try to deny or delay declaring a recession for as long as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. So anticipation of a official admission of a recession in 2025 after everything is all said and done presidential election wise, but also I would probably anticipate more rosier, shocking, GDP figures just because it'll play in line with the narrative of trying to keep things, peaches and cream. And yeah, okay, but keeping it moving. And also, you sent me that the Fred chart on the wealth gap
Yeah,
uh, percentile. Let me bring that up here because I'm curious. I was looking at that. I'm gonna move myself out the way,
and me
but
as well. Yeah.
break this down for us because I was curious to see what you had in mind with this one.
Well, because uh, the current system we have of
Hmm.
fiat currency and inflation, especially, favors the top 1%, not even the top 10%. So if you scroll back up, the bottom
Okay,
50, you can barely see the bottom 50.
get you
Uh,
there.
you know, and if you hover over it at the end there,
Yeah, give me a second. Sorry.
yeah. So you see the bottom 50% of Americans own just 2.6% of all the wealth.
Hmm.
That's the bottom 50. And the top 1% own like more than 30%. I just think that's a result of fiat currency and inflation. It shows how the rich, can protect themselves. I'm not saying I believe in income, wealth distribution or socialism. What I believe in is a level playing field in the money situation. Having sound money, gold and silver, and no inflation would help the people, the 50% of the bottom. So if you go to the other side now, and we
Yeah,
go
give me
back
a
to
second.
1989,
Yeah,
you move us around. I think it
yeah.
goes as far back as 1989. Oh yeah. Uh,
There we go.
so the bottom 50 was still quite low, but it was more, 3.5%. But the top 1%, they were down at 20, just below 23%. So you can see that the top 1% benefited a lot more than the bottom 50, in the last 35 years.
Yeah, yeah, and I would attribute a lot of that to the way the monetary structure is set up, and on top of that, majority of the people that are higher net worth individuals as well as income earners, they are the ones that acquire quote unquote assets like real estate,
Yeah.
luxury items. They
And
have a portfolio
yeah,
which
the other
allows them to
thing,
benefit from easy money policy that we've witnessed. Anyway, go ahead.
I would say is that the people at the top, they control legislation for taxation. So corporate taxes are minimal. There's a lot of subsidies for corporations, but for the people at the bottom, even though they don't pay uh, that much tax, it does make a difference for them. So I would say also the fact that there's no taxation, I think, on dividends as well in the
Mhm.
U.S., if I'm not mistaken, that's a great thing, and the fact that they can borrow so cheaply. Uh, they're billionaires who borrow cheaply and they deduct that against their taxes. And they've been able to borrow cheaply because interest rates have been, up until recently very low. But, the bottom 50, they can't do that.
Right. Good point. Good point. Good point. Good point. And speaking of which, let's get into some sound money discussion. I think recent announcement out of Arizona is definitely shocking because it comes at a time where it's flying under the radar. But it says Arizona Senate committee passes bill to establish a bullion depository and a transactional gold-backed currency. And so as of now, it's just put out there as a bill. So Arizona is one of them states, like Utah, Arizona, and some of those other Western states. They already have favorable policies towards gold and silver, um, whether it be removal of capital gains tax, as well as I think in Utah you can actually use it for purchase of items at the
Yeah.
store or whatever. So they have some stuff set up already. But Senator Jake Hoffman introduced Bill 1633 on February 5th. The proposal law would establish a Arizona bullion depository. The depository would serve as a safeguard for precious metals and would facilitate the issuance of a state-minted gold and silver coins, along with a specie-backed transactional currency. So that's very favorable for the people of Arizona if it gets to the point where it's
Yeah.
actually being instituted. So,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, just a couple of comments here.
Yeah,
It's
go ahead.
still like just passed the committee, so it has to go through a vote in the Senate of Arizona, and then in the House. And it's interesting that they're looking to do like some kind of digital gold backed currency, but also coins, which is great, gold and silver coins.
Yeah.
And the bullion depository, the state of Texas has one already, and I've heard from the people at Glint, who I'm still affiliated with Glint. They're kind of a digital way of owning gold. And they keep the gold, of course, allocated in a vault in Switzerland. They're actually working with some states in the U.S. Because they want the technology similar to Glint for people to be able to transact with a debit card, which is interesting. And the Arizona proposal not doesn't just allow you to spend gold or pay with gold through a debit card or electronically, but it also gives the option of having the physical gold coins and silver coins, which I think is great. I mean, it's still early days, but it looks like, Mike, the move to sound money is not going to come from the top. It's going to come from the bottom, from the states.
State by state. And so another question would then be, if this was to get some traction and get passed, get moving, it would come definitely at the right time, because it would give the people of Arizona in particular a chance to diversify their holdings of currency and actually get back to some legal tender in reference to gold and silver and redeem some of those fiat notes. But I'm thinking, like, this current moment, we still price everything in USD terms. And so once again, it's the idea of swiping that card for coffee and deducting 0.001% of gold, or
Yeah,
0.002% of silver.
it's easy. It's easy though, because if you use Glint, and I have a Glint card, and for those who would be interested, go to the description of my video below, and you could open a Glint account. What happens? It shows you how many grams of gold you have, and it tells you how many pounds or dollars that is. So there's no problem. It does it automatically, and I think eventually people will just get used to. The value of other things in terms of grams of gold or silver. People get used to things very quickly. Different, it will be a bit difficult for some people, I guess, because the US dollar has been used for so long.
Yeah. Now, so the ease of use aspect, is quite simple, because it's all on the back end done by their software. So that's cool, because years and years ago, when I was with Gold Money, I had a card from Europe, and when I went to Cuba, I was able to swipe and use that card there, and they did all the deductions, and it came in handy because I couldn't use it as an American. My bank account wouldn't let me do it, so it came in handy. But the point is, do you really want to spend gold and silver, given the fact that we're nowhere near where
Yeah,
it could end up? So it's like dipping into
yeah.
your insurance policy prematurely,
Yeah,
which is like,
they do talk about that in that article, that they expect something eventually called the reverse Gresham's law, because people will see that if they keep their gold and silver, compared to the fiat dollar, it will be a much better proposition, especially if they take away all the taxation and the legal tender laws from the state of Arizona. That's the argument. But I know what you're talking about. But I think it's a good step, though.
Yeah, it'd be a good option to have, just
Mhm.
because instead of
Yeah.
spending, like, by letting it sit and increase in USD terms, you'll be somewhat you'll be gaining some purchasing power that is
Mm.
basically being transferred to
Uh,
you as the monetary base
and,
expands. So,
and if
yeah,
enough states go to this kind of system, it will basically kill the Federal Reserve because gold and silver are much better than paper. And yeah, so that could be another way to abolish the central bank. But of course, it's early days. I think
right.
we got super chat.
So yeah, I'm gonna bring that up. So
Yeah.
Chris, let me bring this up here. So another question I have for everybody out there, based upon just what discussion we're having in reference to, would you use a new technology linked to gold and silver in today's environment? I'm curious to see in the chat, yes or no, if people would be willing to use it, or if they do already. So just to get an idea as to what the public thinks as of now. But Chris says, is it possible that the Fed will not be able to cut rates if CPI remains high? Will that crash the markets if they don't? Thanks. Great question.
I think it is possible that they might not be able to cut and it could crash the markets, but I think they'll do everything to keep the markets elevated
Mhm.
through I don't know, they could come up with new programs. They always
Mhm.
do. And new programs read more money printing. So they would do something to keep liquidity going, and maybe not really cut rates. But yeah, I think it's possible, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. I can see them doing some type of monetary maneuvering with some type of creation of some product or something or service that allow things to be further kicked down the line. So that's definitely in their cards for sure. And then here's an interesting the little tweet you sent me back to the subject about gold. And so it's just, this person said, I sleep better with my wealth insurance, gold. And that is not to say is it a more of a comforting feeling to know that you're awake and aware, and you've taken some precautionary measures to preserve your time, energy, and capital in the form of real
Yeah,
real money.
the other thing I think about is like with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, it's like
Mhm.
it's just a concept. It's if something goes wrong, you can't hold your Bitcoin or your Litecoin or whatever. You can
Right,
hold your
right.
silver. And yes, they their prices have gone up a lot, and I think that's fooling a lot of people into jumping into the wrong game. But I know there'll be a lot of haters out there, but that's the
Yeah.
way I feel. And you can have your opinion. I'm gonna be how do they call I forgot the word now, but
It'll come to you. And
a
so,
Luddite. Luddite.
night.
Luddite. That's someone who's stuck in the past.
Okay. So yeah, so I fall on both sides of this camp here. I speculate, and then I also realize the importance of having some sound that you can feel. And in comparison to that, being able to touch something in your hand, that is a very comforting feeling. And it is nerve wracking on the digital side when you transacting with keys, because if you off one number,
Yeah, and then
kapoof.
well, I post my videos on I don't know if you remember Steam It and
Uh huh.
Hive.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
I've been posting there for years, and I earned those altcoins. And after some months, I accumulate some of the altcoins because when people watch it, I get paid. And
Hmm.
I sent some Steam and Hive couple of months ago to the exchange, and I didn't realize the exchange had blocked deposits for those coins. So my coins were in the middle. I didn't know where they were
Yeah.
for months, and eventually they showed up. But
So
it,
that
there's a lot of
time delay,
pitfalls.
that time delay on the block transaction process. And I mean, that's
It
different.
wasn't
So it
even
just,
a time delay. It's just that the exchange, for some reason, blocked Hive and Steam for a
mhm,
month or two. So, and I didn't know that when I transferred the coins. That I should have looked, but so I thought I'd lost those coins. But eventually, they reopened the deposits, and it was
yeah.
there. So, like you said, it's not, it's not as convenient as just, having that in your hand.
Right. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. And so, speaking of which, as far as reallocating or reshuffling the deck, we have a lot of billionaires now deciding to unwind some things and get out of something and into something else. And so, Amazon, with Bezos just dumping shares as of lately, and so I'm sure he has a strategy and a purpose behind that. You know, Elon got denied a major payout not long ago, and Mark Zuckerberg sold off a little bit, took some chips off the table. So definitely they are aware of
Yeah.
some things. And then we got Drunken Miller, who's also deciding to get out of the old and into the new by
Well, no, get
dumping
out of
Alibaba
the
and
get out.
Amazon and getting into Barrett Gold and Newmont. So he's
No, he's
getting
sorry, Mike.
semi-physical.
He's getting out of the new and going into the old.
Good point. Way to clarify that. Thank you. So yeah, so he's anticipating something to happen in the metal space by getting a hold of the miners. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
So
I
go ahead.
recently bought a bit of Newmont before he
Mhm,
announced this a couple of days ago. Not
mhm,
because I'm clever or anything. It's just that Newmont is so low with gold near an all-time high, and the
mhm.
dividend there is around 5%. So I think I'm not giving people advice, but if you want to have an exposure to gold and still have a pretty good income, I would say Newmont is a good bet at almost 5% dividend yield.
Yeah, so let me, since you're talking, I just typed in top gold miners and dividends and see what's recommended. This is the first post that popped up here, and we got a nice little list. And no, here's Newmont
Yeah,
Corporation, Barrick Gold.
4.84% Newmont.
So yeah, we got a nice little list of companies that pay you to own them. So just something to consider for those who are interested. What else we got here? Let's get into some more topics here, and then we'll get ready to open up the Q&A portion. Okay, I'm curious of your thoughts. So there's a lot of videos circulating now of not Elon Musk, but Tucker Carlson during his trip to Russia. He went to McDonald's, bought a Happy Meal, some fries and stuff like
It's
that.
not called McDonald's anymore, is it?
It's taste that is tasty or something like that.
Tasty
So
already, isn't it? Tasty
yeah,
already.
let me so it looks like McDonald's, the brand, sold their franchises to a
Yeah,
billionaire over there,
yeah, and
and then
it's
that
interesting
billionaire
that they
surrendered.
sold it, Mike. The Russians had to buy it. They didn't confiscate McDonald's. Just wanted to
Mhm.
put that out there. Like,
Yeah.
who we've taken their assets. They buy it from, from the West. And I think he had two cheeseburgers,
Mhm.
a large cola, and a chocolate cake, and it was $7. I don't know if that's how expensive that would be in the U.S.
I mean, to me, that sounded cheap because I don't go to McDonald's, but the equivalent style fast food chains, like we got like Culver's and a couple other places I go to. And literally yesterday, I purchased what was it? It was a combo meal of some kind with a extra spicy chicken sandwich. It came with $21.
Whoa.
So a combo meal with the extra sandwich, $21. It was
Yeah,
good, but $21. Like, so for individual person, you spend a 20 at a minimum. And
yeah,
so yeah, so Tucker got away. Tucker
yeah.
got away with a nice
And
little meal.
he went to a supermarket as well,
Yeah.
and he went around and just threw things in the
Cart.
trolley or a cart. You call it cart. We call it trolleys. And he said that if, with his producers, they said, they guessed that in the States the whole thing would have been $400, and he went through the till, and when he went to pay, it was $104. So there's a
Okay.
senator, if you want to talk about it, he said
Yeah.
that Tucker's a useful idiot.
Yeah. Let me
To
find it.
go.
Yeah, this guy here, man, North Carolina. What's his name? Senator Tom Tillis, who voted to give more money to Ukraine, calls Tucker Carlson an idiot. And
Yeah.
so, once again, like, okay, he's revealing another side of Russia that the mainstream media and the propagandists would never want us to know. And so,
Mm.
one of the key takeaways from Tucker Carlson's experience in Russia, based upon what was presented to us, is that their economy is nowhere near as bad as the West wants us to believe.
And
And
if
so,
anything, it's actually you know sometimes even better than over here.
correct. And I saw another person mention, like, okay, that's just in Moscow. There's other major cities. And then this person who had a previous background in Russia, he was saying he can attest to the other states as well, being similar nature, cleaner cities,
Yeah.
and people caring more about their culture and keeping things, nice and clean in their subways and things like that. I'm like,
Mike, I think we should stop here. We're going to be called Russian apologists, Putin apologists. No.
So yeah, nothing wrong with it. Just a different opinion, unbiased, and just sharing our 2 cents. And speaking of which, then we get into some Q&A in a minute. But there's a term circulating on Twitter or X. It's called cultural enricher. And so when you type that in, you get a viewpoint of people with their cameras recording events that's taking place in Europe primarily, of the mass migration of a variety of cultures, lifestyle, beliefs, religions, whatever, invading Europe. And it's not pretty at all, man. Like, to see what's happening in the UK and France and Spain, of people who are not from there coming into those territories and just completely just destroying way of life for everyday citizens born in that land, man. It's sad to see,
Yeah,
but
I'm
that's what's happening here. Go ahead.
I'm not against immigration. I mean, when I came to England in 1992, I was living in Switzerland. I was working there, and I was offered a job here, and I liked England because it was more. The culture was more like in the U.S. And it was. I think England is more like the U.S. than it's like Europe, and I thought, and I came here, and even when I lived in Switzerland too, there's the old saying, when in Rome, you go to a country because you like that culture and you want to adopt that culture and be like that culture. But a lot of the people coming here, they know nothing about our culture. A lot of times they don't like us, and they want to change it. And that's the problem I have with that. Back in the day, Ellis Island, people came from Europe because they wanted to embrace the American culture, and they didn't want to change America into, how it was in the old country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing I'm noticing that's disturbing is how, like, in reference to Islam, and how they're praying anywhere they want, on the streets, in the middle of the street, in the roads, and stuff like that, and the government allows it,
Yeah,
and
and here in the
it's going to be
UK,
a problem.
sorry to interrupt you. And here in the UK, if Christians do that, if they start praying in the middle of the road, they're arrested.
Right,
So
right. So the biasness there lets us know where we're heading, but then again, like, we can see what time it is. So anyway, but we have more thoughts to share. But let's get into some Q&A, man, because we can go deep into that one. And yeah, so feel free to throw out some thoughts, ideas, suggestions in the chat, and let's get some back and forth. And if you guys want,
low
we
blood
can.
pressure has said, Mario, admit you moved because you hated the metric system. Actually, low blood pressure in Brazil, where I grew up, we had the metric system. In the US, you've got, the imperial system. And I'm actually, my dad always taught me to convert to know both systems. So I'm comfortable with either system. Here in England, it's really confusing and complicated.
Mhm.
When you drive your car, it's all in miles per hour,
Yeah.
the speed. but a lot of things are in meters as well. The weight is not in pounds; it's in stones. One
Mhm.
stone is 14 pounds. So and then builders, they use millimeters. It's all confusing. So we have to convert a lot of things,
Yeah.
which I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gives you some good mental exercises
Yeah.
to figure that stuff out. Yeah, so feel free as always to throw in the chat any ideas, thoughts, suggestions, or whatever, or other topics that we didn't touch on from this previous week, or things of importance you guys want to bring up, and bring something to the table. Definitely. Let me see. Anything stands out? Anything is
Let me see.
question? It says not much talk about CBDC's ATM false flag. Not much talk about CBDCs.
At the
ATM false
moment,
flag.
at the moment. Oh,
Yeah.
18. There a false. What do you mean 18 at the
The-
moment?
there was a blackout in a European country
Hmm.
where I saw a video footage of someone trying to go to the ATM and they were all out of commission, things of that nature. So not sure if that was still
Yeah,
ongoing, but it was a major country. I can't think of what it was.
there's oh,
Honest question: do you think music and the radio is just too loud nowadays? Do computers confuse and scare you?
music in the radio. Oh, well, I don't listen too much to music from the radio. Lately, I've been listening to classical music. I find it really, soothing. So I've got on my phone like Mozart and stuff. So when I go walk Rudy, I put it on.
Yeah.
My wife likes the loud music. Sometimes I have to tell her to turn the volume down. But
Hey.
music definitely affects people, I think, psychologically and emotionally. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think I've never liked loud music and rock and roll that much. I remember even when I was growing up in Brazil, when we are going to school, uh, my mother would be driving us to school, and my sisters would put the radio on really loud. And I told them, "Can you turn it off, please?" And they call me a geek. Why do you want the music? I never really liked that.
And speaking of which, also one thing I noticed is the frequency at which the music plays. There's a variety of frequencies, and here they completely distorted the frequency, which harmonizes the body and stuff like that. So I
Oh
think
yeah,
432 hertz is
432 is good, isn't it? And we
correct.
don't
And
have
I
that.
think all classical music from back in the day is at that frequency. So there's something about it that has the mind and it's soothing and all that other stuff with it. Then you cut some rock and roll is like 440, and it's like just
Yeah,
destabilizing.
and if you add 4 plus 3 plus 2, you get 9. And a lot of people think that 9 is like a very important number.
Mm. Yeah, there's something about numbers that I haven't dived too deep into that, but Felix says, "What is the average Russian income to compare cost relevancy to the Tucker discovery?" Great point. And so what I did was I just put this on the screen here. This is a little. Let me see. I'll zoom in just to give us some information from the internet. But it says, according to sources, the average a monthly salary in Russia varies depending on the industry. It says all industries in Russia amounted to 31,500 or 500 per month in January, 38,000, 31 and 38,000 roughly. This is back in December, so this is not much to base upon, but um, it looks like it might be lower overall compared to the Western
Yeah,
Hemisphere.
it is lower, but what you have to look at is something called purchasing power parity.
Parity, yeah.
So the Russian nominal wages will not be as higher, for example, as in the West, but their taxes will be a lot lower. They only
Mhm.
pay 13% tax across the board. And that, yeah, that's partly why that shopping was a lot cheaper, $104. But it goes to show that why couldn't all that stuff that was bought there in Russia also be $104 in the US or here in England? And I think the reason is that there's a lot of red tape, regulations,
Mhm.
taxes like VAT, sales tax, that add on to that $104. So
Yeah.
I get your point there, though.
And then another thing about the overall quality of food. in Russia. Like since Putin banned GMOs, apparently within that territory there, the food might be healthier and overall better for you. So not only is it a little bit cheaper for the Russians, but also is it's not designed to literally, kill you, so per
Well, I
se.
think GMO is like I think you can be get into big trouble in Russia if you try to plant GMO.
Right, right. And so here's just more. I typed in GMO in Russia, and he's talking about that whole McDonald's situation. How since GMO foods is banned, potentially the food that's being served at those restaurants are better
Mm.
quality. But then
Yeah,
again,
I've seen like for example, I watched this golf YouTube channel. These young guys called Good the channel, and
mhm,
they've traveled several times to the UK in the last few years to play golf. It's a huge channel, and they say they go to McDonald's here and say, "Wow, the food here, the McDonald's here is so much better." You know,
the
they
food
can
here,
tell,
or
yeah,
in the,
they can, yes, in the UK, the
yeah,
McDonald's in the UK, they said it tastes so much better than the American McDonald's because it's all, it's not as tinkered with
right,
uh, as in the US,
right.
and I don't think, yeah, that's why
Yeah,
it's.
the FDA, the Food Drug Administration, like they're just like the CDC. They're like I don't know if they're even officially government entities, other than just being entities disguised as something for the people that all the nonprofits funnel and the companies funnel money through and to get
Yeah.
things passed. So
Yeah, I saw a little clip as well the other day that most U.S. restaurants are only, all their um, food is sourced by one big company or very few big companies. So,
right,
yeah, I think that's what the FDA and all the regulation does, and it happens elsewhere too. It helps the big corporations, and the big corporations don't care about quality. They care about uh, mass and things being cheap. They don't
right,
care if it's good for you. They just care about the making as much profit as they can. And I think that's why there's a lot of health problem in the U.S. and even
right.
in the UK to some extent.
Obesity. Obesity in America is one of the leading causes of a variety of illnesses.
Mm.
And everybody here, unfortunately, they eat more than they work out. That's just unfortunate. But here's an interesting thought from Crop Dust that says Russia has facial recognition and digital money. It's the only wing of the WEF bird.
You could be right. You could be right, but I've seen a few videos pop up in the last couple of weeks about uh, Westerners going to Russia, and a lot of them say that one of the reasons they're going there is because of family values. So there are other things, but I agree with
Mhm.
you. Who knows? They could be, the because the people in power always want to have a thesis and an antithesis, don't they? They
Mhm.
always
Yeah.
want to have. So they could be controlling Russia too.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't doubt it. Like I mentioned, like they have everything that's happening in the rest of the world is happening there too with the digital ID and all that stuff like that. So it's, yeah, I mean, they all want to be interconnected. That's where this is all heading, unfortunately. I saw another interesting question from Viv. It says one of my bank accounts is offering a digital wallet connected to a debit card of checking account, a precursor to CBDC. I don't like it. Can opt out for now. 7 banks doing this. Interesting. Okay, a digital wallet connected to a debit card. So I wonder how they're spinning that. Let me see. I did see.
so why do you need a debit card if you have a digital wallet? Can't you just?
Right, because right here, if she's in the US, you can use a tap and pay. So
Yeah, you can
iPhone
just.
and Samsung, everybody got that now, tap and
Yeah,
pay. So that would be
yeah.
the next. Interesting. I don't know. But then again, the question will be how will they work it in slowly but surely to where it'll be a seamless transition where people won't
I
even know.
mean, I wouldn't mind if, let's say, the state of Arizona eventually got that, precious metals back currency,
Mhm.
and even if it was digital, it would be protect people's privacy.
Right.
That's the whole thing. I don't mind digital, but when the government has access to the system, that's where I don't like it.
Yeah. Question, it says how much gold and silver would allow you to retire a true millionaire after the reset?
Well, um, I mean, I think people should think more in terms of their what they think. Some people have different perceptions of how to be happy. They
Hmm.
might
Hmm.
not need as much money. They might just need, a roof over their heads. It depends where you live. But I think, yeah, if you have some gold and silver now, after the reset, it will be, in my opinion, a lot more valuable than it is now, and you'll be able to be quite comfortable. I think how much it's up to each individual, and how it's like, how much should I save? It depends on how much you earn, and how you lead your life, and so
Yeah.
but I don't know how to be. Does it matter if you're a millionaire? That's the other thing.
Right, and especially in the world we're heading into, I'm under the impression that they're literally setting things up, to where you either have or you don't have. And if that motto of you own nothing and be happy with it, it lets me know that majority of people won't be in a financial status of being able to call themselves 1% millionaire or whatever. So they're literally setting it up to where it's going to be them and the rest of the world at the bottom, to where
Mm,
I don't think even the terminology of being a millionaire will be
yeah,
something
I,
people will even
I,
consider.
I remember someone gave me. In hindsight, it was really bad advice. I was doing an internship before I started my first job, and the head of this firm said, "Oh, you should aim to be a millionaire by age 30."
Hmm.
But I think that's the wrong advice. You should aim to do something that, hopefully you enjoy, and that you create value, and the rest will come. If you become a millionaire or billionaire, so be it. And if you don't, you can still be happy, and you know
Right.
do things.
Right. Ultimately aim to do something that you enjoy doing, that you can do until the time you depart. So
Yeah.
whether you're 30 or 75, you're still adding value. And from that,
Mm.
the money
Yeah.
will come. What else here? Anything, any other questions? Low income folks with little capital new
Oh yeah,
gains.
there's a comment there about the Welsh farmers uh, being 20% confiscated. So yeah, they've had protests in Wales as well, the farmers, because the Welsh government, they want to basically, it's not really confiscate, but they're trying to tell the farmers what to do, not to
Hmm.
farm on 20% of their land. So the
Hmm.
analogy here would be, if the government came to you and I and said, oh, you won't be able to do 10 videos a month anymore, you have to do just 8. It's the government telling you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's wrong. There's going to be a farmers protest tomorrow in Dover, in the south coast here in the UK, so it's going to
Yeah.
spread.
Yeah, man. So definitely keep us up on that. Well, we're approaching 50 plus minutes. Let's get ready to dial back. Anything else? Anything we're looking forward to next week or so coming up that's worth mentioning? What anything come to mind, Mario?
Well, I guess maybe in the US, I don't know how
What we got?
the house is going to be able, are they going to pass that package
Oh,
for, the 85 billion? I think that would be important. They've kind of tried to scare people by saying that the Russians have nuclear weapons in space now, or can send it there.
yeah.
uh, but I think if this 85 billion goes through in the house, and Biden, of course, will sign on to it, you could see the stock market go higher, because it will be driven maybe by the arms manufacturers. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, and also another thing is there's a potential strike. Flight attendants here. There's 100,000 flight attendants. 3 different unions are up for negotiations, and if
I
something doesn't
thought
go
the
well,
economy was doing really well, Mike.
yeah,
Why do they need to strike?
they want more pay, better retirement benefits, and better working conditions. The same as
Mm,
all people who work for these publicly traded companies. So, and then also somebody mentioned Bitcoin doing this thing. So 52,000 and climbing. So that's going to be it's going to be getting a lot of attention from mainstream. So yeah, we'll see how long that lasts and where it goes. But to each his own. All right, my good people. Well, enjoy the rest of your day and weekend, and we'll be back at it next week, Lord willing. And yeah,